Will.
Thanks for having me.
Congrats on your book. Look at my little product placement. Soul searching, tune into spirit and awaken your inner wisdom. Like, who doesn't want that? Right. So, tell us about this book and what led you to write this one.
Yeah, this was a favorite for me right now because this all began about 3 years ago when the world really shifted very dramatically and it shut down, and there's a lot of fear around everywhere, conscious in this conscious cloud of fear. So at the time, I was guided to lead these meditations actually for people around the world and wanted to help them access the realm of spirit, to access their higher self, to kind of give them the tools that they needed to help them disconnect from certain earthbound type of energies. And so when I was really coming to terms with this new book, I wanted to give everyone just basically a workbook, a guidebook to help them through their everyday with very simple type of visualizations and techniques to show them what they are designed for in the world that we live in. And when we truly know that we are a soul inhabiting this body for a brief time, then we tend to really view life in a different way, and we tend to really want to preserve our energy and also understand that what we are vibrating is co-creating the world around us. So that's really where soul searching was bred from.
And so, give us a little bit of background on you. So, pandemic hits and you're like, oh, let me start offering these meditations. So, tell us a little bit about who you are, like how you define yourself.
Absolutely. So I'm a psychic medium, but I like to refer to myself as a channel for spirit. So that's who I am. And my story began many years ago. I lost my mother physically when I was 14. And she came to me a few nights later, and I thought I was going crazy. And that was my awakening. And it basically followed me all through my adolescent years to a point where I was not able to avoid it any longer, actually. And so when I really surrendered to spirit and what they had really planned for me, that's when my life began to open up in a much different way, capacity. And because I believe that everyone who has an awakening, there's usually some form of trauma that breaks our hearts open in some way. And for me, that began as early as my childhood. And so I really do take it very seriously how to kind of balance my energy daily because I do have some of that, residual trauma response from my childhood. So it really does help me facilitate myself to be a clear channel for other people when I'm able to balance my own energy for myself.
Yeah, it's the energy balancing. I think, it ties into everything and what you talk about in the book, right? How would you describe for a listener who's like, what do you mean energy balancing? Because sometimes we meet someone and we're like, oh my God, they have great energy, or oh my God, like energy just feels a little off. Like, how do you even describe that? I don't know if I could, but I know what you're talking about, right?
Absolutely. We are energy first, and everything that we experience in our life has to do with vibration. And it has to do with how we are basically transmitting a vibration within ourselves. And for many people, until you have an awareness of what that actually means, we go through life on autopilot. We are kind of blind to that other part of ourselves. But once we understand who we are at the core of ourselves and at the center of our soul, the pinlight of who we are, then we start to realize that there's more to this life than just being here and working a job and paying bills. And we're designed for true connection with people, and we've all been given this beautiful GPS system internally to help navigate the world around us. And so when we get out of our own way and we listen to ourselves versus listening to the world around us, that's when that voice within, our higher self voice within activates and it becomes louder. And it really does help us in our everyday life. And it helps us understand how to really discern our physical self, our ego self versus our soul self or our spirit self.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And As you say this, it makes me think of kind of my next question for understanding soul self, spirit self, etc. And it's around like the connection between our conscious and subconscious self, right? And using those to connect spiritually. And how do you recommend listeners do that? Like, what are some kind of go-to methods that you have found to kind of help bring those pieces together? Because as you say, we can live very, very in the head, not paying attention to what is below the surface, the energetics of things, or, kind of live life, rinse and repeat. Or we can try to pause from time to time or regularly and just check in with ourselves and pay attention. And is that kind of what you mean when you talk about conscious and unconscious or subconscious connecting?
It really is. And I like to give the analogy too of it's like walking a tightrope, between the two realms. And it's a daily practice. It's something that we have to give our conscious awareness to. And when we are aware of our energy and our physicality and both of those parts of ourselves, I would say anyone who's new to this, I would encourage you first to find something that grounds you, and for every person that's going to look different. I know for myself, I love to walk my dogs in nature. That really helps ground me personally. It helps pull me into the present moment. For other people, it might be running, it might be exercising, it might be journaling or meditating, but really trying to anchor yourself first and ground yourself, I feel is the first step in activating the rest of that energetic system that we're all connected to in some way, shape, or form, or our chakra system. So I would say too, and I do this every day myself, the moment that I focus on my breath and the moment that I give myself to this continuous motion of my breath, that's when I'm able to kind of disconnect from the rational part of my being, the little chatty Cathy that wants to continuously talk your ear off with things that are kind of just ridiculous at times. And so once you're in that space of your breath and of your awareness, then you're able to really see what's real and what's not real around you. And I also believe that that's the first step too in having an awareness or a personal awareness is knowing of what we have control over and what we don't. And also that we do have the ability to actually redirect our thoughts and our energy towards something else. But it takes a conscious choice in the moment. And it's one of those things that if you don't do it in the moment, it's going to pull you down like a rip current. You're going to drown underneath this rip current. But if you understand that in that moment of opportunity to give yourself the awareness and the power to think differently and to choose differently, then you're able to see life in a much more magical sense. Things look more vivid in your everyday life because you're tuned in on a different level of frequency.
So beautiful. And the thing that I just wrote down that I think is so important, and I think our listeners will really resonate with this, is the importance of just grounding yourself, right? Whatever, it might be your morning cup of coffee. It might be listening to the birds. I'm looking out on my garden, right? It might, whatever, walking the dogs, all these sorts of things, right, are so important. And to recognize, yes, our minds are a bit rogue, and we can also help to redirect it like a sweet little puppy that we're training over and over and over again.
Oh, so true. And I really do feel too that journaling is a very powerful tool as well because it sort of helps unclog what's going on inside of our heads too. And when you're able to really look at what's going on in your mind and to give it a truth or to give it a label of some sort, then it does take away fear as well, and because we are designed in a way of survival, and we're designed in a way to have to find our next meal, for example, when we're able to understand what is innate in us, but just because it's innate in us doesn't mean that it's serving us right now in this time and space, so actually, one of the exercises in soul searching is a direct part of this, of showing people how to sort of get out, to write down what's in our heads and then to make sense of it and to flip the script around too. And I really do feel that when we are able to flip the negatives, that we experience, that we're giving our subconscious mind a way to kind of absorb that programming. And whatever we are programming from within is going to be brought to us in the physical sense over time. And I know that when somebody gives this a daily repetition, just like, brushing your teeth and showering, hopefully we all do that once a day. If you do this as well, you start to see the rhythm of it, and the patterns of it. And once you recognize that pattern and that validation, you want more of it. And the more that you do this, you also start to see how you are being guided by what I refer to as our spiritual web as well. So we have a committee of souls around us. We have our angels, we have our deceased loved ones, we have spirit guides sent to us as well. We have these very wise ascended masters too that we all have access to. And the more that we build this language with our higher self, with our awareness, and with spirit, the more supported we feel in all of our daily endeavors, too.
Yeah. And, that is one of my questions for you. This is about the spiritual web. And so, how would you encourage listeners to kind of get into or embrace or embody the spiritual web?
I feel like it's going to be unique for every person, but I feel like if there's some way that you can get into your prayer module, and for everyone, it's going to look a little bit different. It might be some people pray when they're driving to their job, in their minds, they're doing it subconsciously. Some people get into the lotus position, and are in that frequency when they pray. Others journal as prayer too. So it really comes down to talking in your mind's voice and recognizing that when you're doing that, the other side is very aware of your voice internally. So you don't have to actually vocalize anything for them to experience what you're trying to convey to them. It's all down to thought formation and what you're feeling as well on the inside. So let's just say that this is new to somebody right now, and they're like, I don't know about this. Oh, let's see, I totally get that skepticism too. It does take an awareness and an openness, though, to allow yourself to access that part of yourself that's all knowing already. And that's already tuned into that frequency naturally and organically. And we all are. We're literally all channels of light walking around this planet. And we don't all realize that, but we are. So the more that we take stock of that and we really do lean into the concept of that communication, then we start to see how we're being heard. We start to see the signs showing up around us. And in really bizarre ways at times, very unique ways, very synchronistic ways too, where we're like, well, okay, I know for sure that I did not put a feather there by my front door this morning, or there's no way that I put a dime, on my kitchen counter last night. So it's really about really taking stock and kind of validating and acknowledging what you are experiencing in your everyday life. So important.
So important,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Many people would just walk by the dime, right?
That
Others, yeah, I love that. What about, daily intention setting? Because you mentioned this in the book, and I'm curious, as you think about rituals or, prayer, meditation, how do you do this on a daily basis of setting your intentions and staying in alignment with them?
a great question. And we're doing it already on autopilot because we live inside of our conscious mind for the duration of our physical life here. So we're already thinking and feeling or anticipating things around us, but when it's on autopilot though, it has a tendency to kind of just be directed to wherever your feelings are in that moment. When I talk about setting an intention, I'm talking about the fact that having the ability to really go within and visualize and feel what it is that you're wanting to experience energetically. So, the same way that we have the ability to pick out our outfit every day, and we're like, I want to feel brighter today, I'm going to wear a bright orange color, or if I'm feeling more, melancholy, I'm going to put on some black, pants or whatever it is. We have the same ability to really activate that energy around us as well. So I do this first thing in the morning before I even get out of bed, actually. And it all begins with my gratitude first, of course, because I really do believe that gratitude instantly pulls up our vibration. It sets the platform for that creation to occur. And then once we just give the words thank you, it's not rocket science, it's not complicated, and it's innate in us. So once we activate it by just simply feeling gratitude or thinking the words thank you, then we have the space set to start to visualize what we're wanting to intend that day for ourselves. So maybe it's reconnecting with an old friend, maybe it's having just a positive outcome or knowing that we are always being guided and protected. Maybe it's just the word peace, or perhaps it's love or positivity. I like to focus on one word at a time typically when I'm doing this, because I believe that less is more. And when I do that, then I literally will envelop myself in what I refer to as the light of spirit, too. And that also, I believe, kind of echoes out my intention to the universe as well. It sort of amplifies that energy, too. And so when I do that, and I'm aware of it, walking that tightrope between, then being physical self, then I'll start to see that energy line up around me. And when I do, I'll go, oh, yes, of course. That's what I said this morning, or that's what I intended this morning. So it happens that fast typically if you are consciously aware of what's going on.
Yeah, yeah. It just, I mean, it all comes down to, as I hear you say this, it's just paying attention, right? You
Yeah, and
know?
yeah, and the real way to pay attention, is to be as present as we can when we're in this physical experience, but it's just about slowing down and recognizing what's in your vicinity, what's in what I call our orbit. And the more that we give our attention to that, we really are aware of the magic that we hold to pull more of that energy into our orbit to experience. And this comes down to relationships, it comes down to our friendships, it comes down to our soulmate relationships too. Soulmates are not just those that are sent to us romantically. They're anyone that we basically inhabit this experience with. So it could also be a best friend, it could be a coworker, a colleague that pops up randomly into your world at the perfect time, and the two of you are going through the exact same themes in your life. So again, once we recognize that, then we start to see how we are all connected and how we are all interconnected together.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think these are such good reminders as we think about like building these additional layers of who we are and how we stay connected to the world, right? Because even as you mentioned, kind of like the feather or the dime, and you mentioned that your mother had come to visit just a couple days after passing. What was coming up for me too is this idea of signs. And I bought the book, but I haven't read it yet. And I'm curious, is there anything that you would recommend that listeners look out for that is a common thing loved ones will do or send? It's like I always hear about pennies. I don't know about pennies, but or cardinals, right? Or white butterflies. So I'm just curious your take on that.
Absolutely. And this is all very much in my second book, Science from the Other Side. But I also, for me, what I always go to is what is unique for yourself, because spirit's always going to use what's unique for you, what they know to be true for yourself. And for me, that comes down a lot of times to numbers, actually. Spirit knows how I operate with numbers as a language. So I am constantly seeing different patterns of numbers around me. And one in particular is the number 143. It's a long time story ago when my mom was physically here. We were on different coasts and we used to page each other 143 for I love you at the time. And so I see that number every day still going forward. And it'll be in the most random ways. It might be on a receipt. It might be that a car gets in front of me. The last three are 143 on it. My phone will light up at times when it's 1:43 too. So, and every time that I'm experiencing it, I'm saying, thank you. I know it. I know, Mom, thank you. That's huge for me. It's paramount in that connection. Another way that she gets my attention daily too, always has been this way, is by sending me some form of a white butterfly. And I see it every day. And it's one of those things where, it's like, well, what about winter? You're not going to see a white butterfly in the winter time, right? Well, it may not be a physical butterfly flying around me. I might get the most random piece of mail or like a message with that logo or symbol on it too. And I'm like, there it is again. And again, these things happen for me every single day because I'm so in tune with that awareness of those signs. Not only that too, but as a medium for other people, spirit knows my vocabulary as well. So they're always wanting it to be around me as a reminder of how they show up for other people in their lives as well.
Wow, that's so great. And I was just thinking 143, I was like, she passed when you were 14, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So there's a
interesting.
lot of synchronicities there for sure. She also passed on the 14th of August too. So
Mm.
yeah, a lot of different parallels for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Well, because your last chapter in here, right, is grief is love. And for anyone who is grieving right now, are there any tools that you would recommend or that you have found to be helpful getting through the process? Because it's like no other, right?
It really is. And what I like to do and what I did in that last chapter too was try to show people a different way of looking at the word grief too, as the accumulation of the love that we have in our hearts. And so when we're feeling that intense heartache where it feels unbearable and we can't get out of bed in the morning because of how powerful it is. I want to flip the script on that and maybe show people that that feeling is of unconditional love flowing through us in a different capacity for the love that we shared with that individual or with that soul too. Another aspect of grief as well, and really understanding about how spirit is working with us in the background. It's very subtle. It's very much a part of how we experience our thoughts daily too, but they're known for dropping thoughts into our minds. And so those thoughts are usually going to be of the good moments together. It might be something so silly where you guys are drinking coffee and you splash some on your shirt or whatever, and it comes to mind randomly, and you're like, why am I having this random thought right now? But that's really how they're working alongside us to help heal us as well and to show us not to focus on just their physical transition, but to also focus on all the good in between as well. So I would encourage anyone who is in that space right now to number one, take your time because there's no right or wrong way to grieve. First of all, it's going to be unique to each person. And that can take a while. So do not put any pressure on yourself to like an expiration of when you should be done grieving because we grieve the rest of our lives basically. It's a part of who we are.
Mm.
But also recognizing too, take the time to go back to experience the moments that light up your heart as well. They're wanting us to experience those things in unison actually. And so the more that we give ourselves over to the good times, right? We're going to be experiencing more and more of those memories and more of those past events coming through to us.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I teach pet loss support sessions, and that's such a good reminder of focusing on the sweet moments, because for some people, right, the last moment they're with their beloved animals, euthanasia, and so it's like it's hard because that's a memory that really sticks. And so it's like, okay, how do we recall these like beautiful moments when they were healthy and happy and things were smoother, particularly if you're caretaking toward the end, which, of course happens with humans also. And so it's like, I love that, just like that reminder of like, okay, have a photo up of like, them playing fetch, right? When they were, or like, with your mother at a really sweet moment that meant a lot to you versus how the mind can easily like focus on the really more challenging aspects of loss.
Absolutely. And again, going back to that inner dialogue that we have with ourselves and with spirit, I would also just encourage people to just speak to their loved ones too, as if they're in the room with you, because they are with you in the room. And the more that you're able to really get out of your rational mind as to how that's possible, the more that you're going to be able to experience what's real and what's available to you in that moment. And so you might have a dream visitation, you might just have the hairs off of your neck stand up, when you're alone thinking about them, then the lights flash, then their favorite song comes on. So it's usually a sequence of events that continue to validate their presence around us.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you.
Welcome.
Well, before I ask you my last question, and my little pug's snoring loudly, I hope that that's you're not hearing. But as before I ask you the last question, is there anything else that you want to touch on from soul searching that I have not yet hit or we haven't hit in today's conversation?
Just basically the intention too with soul searching was to show us that we all have access to our inner child as well, and that inner child is part of the fabric of our higher self, of our spirit self too. And we've all come here to basically undo the programming that we've experienced in those very early years, and it could be something as simple as someone telling you that your imaginary friend was not real and that you were experiencing a true spirit visitation. It could be a bully in your life. It could have been a toxic family member too that said something at the time. And because we're such sponges to our environments, that what happens is that later in life, we begin to recognize that pattern and that sequence around us. So if we're able to go back within and really nurture that inner child, that's also a form of self-care as well and self-love. And that's really where all of that change can occur, is by going back in time to that innocent part of ourselves that came into this world as such, and that still guides us if we give ourselves over to that energy source.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My last question for you, Bill. The name of the podcast is Tranquility du Jour. So, how do you find tranquility in your everyday? And you just recently moved, right?
Yes, I am so blessed to have this beautiful views from all around where I live right now of just ancient forests everywhere. And so for me, that's my tranquility at the moment. One thing that I love to do though, and my background happens to be music. I was a opera singer in training back years ago. So music's always been very important to me with understanding my vibration and understanding my frequency. So I love to chant every day, actually. So I have different Sanskrit chants that I do with my mala, and that really, for me, does, I feel, manipulate the energy around me and really does pull in that tranquility into my everyday life. So
I love that. I was a big Krishna Das fan back in the day. I'm sure you know Krishna Das, and oh my gosh, there's so many beautiful Sanskrit chanters. And I remember going to India and doing arti, right? And it's just like ritual at night and with candle and all that. You probably know this. And just the singing, at night, like on the Ganji, and the songs, the chants were just so, so beautiful. And, I haven't returned to them since I sold the yoga studio in 2017. So I feel like I want to put on some Krishna Das later. Blend it with a little Toady Minute and memorial.
Oh,
I'm so
yeah.
sad. He passed today. But anyway, as of this recording, listeners. But yeah, little Krishna Das, a little Tony. I think my soul might need that. So thank you. That's a great reminder.
Of course, that sounds lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like probably not a common playlist, but why not? Right. Well, thank you so much, Bill, for being here today. It's been a treat.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure. Thanks so much.